Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Cayleb from Ashland University Women's Program in Ohio. Welcome, Coach.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Excited to talk to you. You got a stellar Division II program up there in Ohio, and being from Columbus, I'm a little partial to the Ohio schools, but
Yeah, for
but I
sure.
won't let that shine through too much here. But that's all right. Well, let's talk about recruiting. It's January when you and I are talking. It's the heavy hitting showcase season and all that kind of stuff, and the transfer portals hopping and all those good things. But right now, where you guys are at, is your 23 class closed, or you still got a couple left? You working on 24s? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think timing is everything. We're still in conversations with some kids that are later in the process for 2023. We've started to create a list for 2024s, being at the ECNL event and RL event in Florida this past week, and the transfer portal has been crazy as well. So a lot of kids that are from the area that know Ashland really well that have reached out to us about potentially joining our roster and our program here at Ashland. So it's a little bit of everything. I think, it's just the right fit for the right kid and understanding where we're at as a program. So I think that, for the 23s, it's always continuing. And with the transfers and now the 24s, we're really starting to dig down into our list.
Well, you mentioned ECNL and RL in Florida, and sorry, I live 3 miles from the Premier Complex and didn't get over there this time.
Yeah.
Just one of those things. But what other tournaments are kind of on your hit list every year? I mean, obviously your roster is Ohio heavy, but where do you like to go to make sure you're seeing players?
Yeah, like the crazy thing is, like when we go to those events, we're watching mostly regionally based teams. So you're looking at Pennsylvania, Michigan, Kentucky, Indiana, New York, Ohio. We went to the ECNL event down in Tennessee. Ohio Elite puts on a showcase here in the next month or two. So, for us, Grand Park always has a couple events that we go to as well. But, the more kids that reach out to us at a certain event, the more we're going to be going to those things and watching those players play. So, again, I think it's most of it is based off the region and where the amount of teams are participating in. So that's kind of where we stick to, and we'll always get some kids outside of the region as we go to those events.
Now, what about camps? Do you guys do your own camps? Does your staff work other camps? How much do they fit into the overall process for you?
Yeah, I think, we kind of use camps that we've already identified players and getting a feel for Ashland University. It's run specifically from our coaching staff perspective, and then we might invite some other local colleges as well to come watch the kids play and participate in our camp. But for us, it's a kind of a last look, or maybe even a first look for some kids of what Ashland University is and what we have to offer. So that's the way we treat our ID camps. We go to some other ones that some other bigger schools in Division I world have, and go and watch some of their camps as well. But for the most part, we stay close to home and do our own kind of thing, and just use it as a intro to Ashland University.
All right. Well, don't forget to post it on the Discover collegesoccer.com website too.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, well, so whether it's camp or one of these showcases, or really watching any players, kind of what's your hierarchy of things that you're looking for in a player that's going to make them stand out, make you guys want to have those future conversations?
Yeah, we do things probably a little bit differently than a lot of other schools. Like the big thing that we love to see is kids that are comfortable on the ball and love to dribble. I think regardless of what position it is, center back, outside back, midfielders, forwards, like we like kids that kind of show that ability to break lines off the dribble. And you kind of miss that in the game today because you see one or two touches, and I feel like everybody can do that. And then you see someone do a move in an event, you're like, oh my gosh, what was that? So those are that kind of the things that entertain us, in the recruiting piece. And, getting to know players throughout this process, I think has changed dramatically since COVID, because now you have the opportunity to meet with every single kid via Zoom. And I think that's been absolutely helpful for our program, because I think one thing that we talk about a lot is culture and getting to know families. And we talk about fit a lot, understanding if that kid we feel is going to be a really good fit to the culture of Ashland women's soccer. So that's been huge, and something that, we never thought of before COVID, now that we've had these opportunities to really get to know our recruits for longer periods of time and have these interactions with them. So it's definitely something that we've picked up on and really done our research on with recruiting, is getting to know these kids outside the soccer element.
Well, and you talk about getting to know the kids. How much are you in conversations with a player's club coach or their high school coach or that kind of thing?
A lot. I think you get different perspectives. I think there's a club setting, like that kid might play a particular position or have certain responsibilities in the club role, and then high school they're completely different. So it's good to build those relationships with those players. You know, we have a really good relationship with a lot of the local high school coaches around here that start giving us names early on and say, hey, you might want to pay attention to this kid. They play at such and such club. They had a really good fall. Can't wait to see how they do in the winter/spring. So I think those things are great. Like we even love kids that, you know, we joke around like a lot of our kids are multi-sport kids and like, hey, how basketball go? And some of them are like, man, I'm a defensive specialist. I don't score any points, but you know, it's just fun to hear about how that's been going and like the rivalry games for them and different sport and hearing how, you know, they're managing, balancing school and other sports and soccer. So it's good to, you know, get the whole perspective, whole person out of the experience.
No, that's awesome. Um, well, as a parent of a daughter that will be going to college, soon, but 4 years from now, I guess.
Right.
But I'm always looking at how much is this going to cost me? So I'm not holding you to hard numbers here, but just give
Yeah.
me an overall example of what an average student athlete walking into the soccer program is going to look at in terms of academic money, athletic money. What does that kind of picture look like?
Yeah, you know, room and board, tuition room and board is probably under 40,000, maybe like 38,000. You know, depending on how you do academically, you're probably looking at anywhere between 8 to 12,000 academically. And then we start having conversation based on athletic aid as we get to know players. I think the important piece for us is the way we go about the recruiting process is you got to love Ashland for Ashland. I don't think the dollar sign should make a difference when having that conversation. If you don't like A, B, and C about Ashland, just because we have an opportunity to talk about athletic aid, that shouldn't change your mind if you don't love the other things about it. So I think for us, that's kind of how we approach it is we have a really long discussion and get kids on visits multiple times before we have those conversations about athletic aid. Because I wanted them to know like this is just a small piece of why you're here. You're supposed to be successful in the next piece of your life. And hopefully Ashland can provide you that. And if that's the case, then great. We'll figure out the athletics piece once you're okay with everything else.
All right, fair enough. Well, there's a lot of people probably listening who aren't familiar with Ashland, who maybe haven't driven through Northern Ohio, but
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about the school. What are some of the awesome things you found at the school that maybe I'm not going to learn just by going through the website?
Yeah, you know, the everybody's asked like, "Where's Ashland?" I'm like, "Well, it's in between Columbus and Cleveland. If you go diagonal, it's right square in the middle."
Yep.
So we're about 7,500 kids. 6,500 kids are undergrad. So it's a decently sized Division II school. You know, athletic amenities that we have. You know, we just built a $30 million indoor facility that our group trains in throughout the winter and spring. We never go outside, which you know I'm not complaining about in Ohio weather. But again, you know, soccer only turf field. We have colleges on the campus as well. So college of nursing, college of arts and sciences, college of business, and college of education. So a little bit more academic driven in those specific colleges, which is nice to kind of know that you're going to go into a specific building and be there and really hone in on the academic piece, you know, wherever you're at in those colleges. So you know, it's a unique experience. I know our College of Nursing does really well here as far as our players on the roster. We have a ton of pre-med, bio, exercise science kids, as well as business kids, and you name it. We probably have, you know, one or two of every major that you can think of.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you talk about academics, so that's tends to be, somewhat of a challenge sometimes for high school kids coming into college for the first time. So, how do your student athletes really balance the commitments between their sport and the academic side, and what kind of support systems does the school offer to help?
Yeah, I think it's part of the experiences of figuring out how to do it on your own. You know, most of our kids are very good students coming in, and I tell them, whatever you've done to be successful in the high school experience, do the same thing in college because that's who you are. I don't force study tables on kids to make them a different type of learner than they are. Some kids don't thrive in being in a environment with 30 or 40 other people and get anything done. So we tend to make sure that our first year kids are checking in on us every couple of weeks, and making sure they're checking in with our assistant or myself and asking about how the academics piece is going, because I think starting out well is a huge piece of your experience at the college level. So the nice piece for us is most of our away trips or our conference is pretty close knit. So there's not a lot of overnight travel. So it's usually down and back. But I make sure that our staff lets the professors know a week ahead of time, like, hey, here's our roster, here's who's leaving, here's what time they need to be dismissed. They're responsible ultimately for making up any work that they need to. So we haven't had a too much of a problem. We had 3.6 GPA. Our girls do a really good job and they won the conference. So I think those are things that are always worrisome at Christmas time, is like, listen, don't win the conference and not do well academically. So I think we had 23 out of our 30 on the dean's list, which is awesome.
Wow, that is well. In terms of the season, let's rewind a few months back to when you were in the throes of it.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through what a typical week would look like for a player in terms of winter classes, meals, practice, games,
Yeah.
cadence, that kind of thing?
Our schedule is pretty straightforward. We practice from 4 to 6 every day. The days that we don't have games, obviously. The reason why we train from 4 to 6 is that's the least amount of class offered at Ashland. So I don't want kids to figure out, well, how am I going to balance the academics piece and athletics piece when there's not too much offered during that time. Now, we might have some kids in our bio pre-med groups that might get out of lab right at 4, or some kids that have night class that have to leave early. But essentially, we want to make sure that we're taking the stress out of that part for them. I think as well, we travel on Thursday, Saturday. So, being able to ahead of time schedule those different classes as a student athlete, making sure that, if you're going to schedule a class on Thursday, make sure it's not every single one of your classes. But again, it's pretty straightforward, and Sundays are a day off. They know the routine. Mondays are usually pretty lighter for us because it's still a recovery, because we played, essentially 2 games in 72 hours. So we don't do much as far as like pushing the group extremely hard during those first couple of days, knowing that, we were going to be going at it pretty heavily over the weekend. So.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more, about the team and the season. I think you mentioned earlier, but is there a roster size that you like to hit each year that you find is ideal?
Well, we have 33 lockers, so I don't want to try to go over that. So that's kind of the max goal that we go for. This year we were right at 30, I think. And my first year with the program, we were about 27. So, 3 or 4 keepers in that mix. So you're looking at, anywhere from, 26 to 28 field players. And that's pretty typical, I think, across the board for Division II. That's kind of the typical roster size. So for us, that's kind of where we imagine ourselves at and kind of put ourselves. But, that changes throughout the course of the year and with kids coming in and going. So, we understand that there's some flexibility in that number.
Okay. Well, in in terms of number of staff, what does your staff look like? What roles does everybody play there?
Yeah, I have a GA. She was an all-region kid for me. She actually helped me out a ton because she played here and knew more kids than I knew when I first got the job. So I got the job 5 days before they moved in last year. So I was playing name games, and Deja, our assistant, was able to fill me in with the players that she played with, knowing the program really well and being a kid that's, close to Ashland for a long time. That was super helpful. And then we also have a part-time goalkeeper coach that comes in and works with our group. So a smaller staff, but I think a lot more conversations that we're able to have being a smaller staff and getting to know our players than rather than, having 5 or 6 different voices to go to and have questions with. So I think it works for us.
No, sounds good. Well, in terms of your style of coaching, team style of play, just kind of the culture of team, can you give me a little bit a background on that?
Yeah. So, when I inherited the job, I think when I came in, I had 10 seniors. And the one thing that they asked me to do, and the importance of them, was they wanted to leave this place better than what they found it. And they felt that culturally things could have gotten better. And I think that was one thing that we stressed my first year is I think it's easy, and we talked about this in the recruiting process, is to identify talented players. I think it's difficult to find kids that you feel are going to be really good teammates and good people without going through the process of getting to know them over a long period of time. So for us, I think that's one thing that we talk about more and we end with every day is it costs you nothing to be a good teammate, but it makes a world of difference. So I think, we've done a really good job of being successful the last couple of years that I've been here, but I think it goes full circle to the emphasis that we put on team culture and being a good teammate and a good student and giving back to the community that makes us who we are.
Okay. Well, in terms of the kind of the on-field stuff, do you guys employ any uh, technology? I was just at the coaches convention and there was all kinds of cameras and analytics and
Yeah.
GPSs and all that kind of stuff. Do you guys do any of that for practices or games?
We film a lot of our training sessions and obviously games as well. Every player has an account that they'll be able to go in and watch video. We do that stuff as a group as well. So that way, at least I know everybody has seen it and had those conversations as far as like what we're looking for as a group. We also use it for our opponents as well. We'll always give the day of the game, give them some clips of what the teams typically try to do against their opponent and kind of be prepared for that kind of stuff. But yeah, the gizmos and the gadgets are unbelievable. And I think, some of it is overwhelming. Some players would love that stuff. Some players, they probably don't care either way. So I think we're going to start trying to look at more like performance stuff with tracking like passes and stuff like that, which we do a lot of statistical stuff just based on staff taking stats. But now you can submit that stuff and, people do it for it. So it's also an opportunity for me to rewatch the games and dig deep into, myself evaluating how we did. So I think for us, like we're going to get into that stuff a little bit more and take the next step. But man, that stuff is pretty cool and as well as overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, as we mentioned, we're talking here in January right before you said your kids have been back a week or two and you're getting off to practice. So what is this off season gonna look like for you typically? What do you guys do between now and say the end of the school year?
Yeah, this is what we call the developmental season because I think, when you're playing in the fall, it's so much soccer condensed in a small amount of time with games that matter. And I think you see a little bit of the version that you are as quickly as you can in preseason, but now we can kind of slow things down and pay more attention to areas that I think we need to get better at. So our typical schedule is train twice a week, lift twice a week. When we get back from spring break, that'll increase to 3 times a week training, 1 day a week lifting. And then we get 5 competitive dates to play other schools. So last year we played 5 Division I opponents. I think we have slotted for 4 this year. I just think it's fun to play different schools that you don't get to play all the time and also schools that we're recruiting against. I think that's, one thing that we use it for is, okay, when you're comparing and contrasting 2 schools, maybe one's a Division I, one's a Division II, here's where the difference is in the level. It might not be that much different than you think, or it might be a lot more different depending on who you're playing. So we use that as kind of a recruiting tool as well. And it's also a preparation for us to be prepared for like the NCAA tournament in like a small spring setting.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we've kind of covered a lot of ground, talked about a lot of different things, and I always like to end these the same way, and that's what didn't we talk about? What else would you like folks to know, whether that's about the college recruiting process, about your school, about the soccer, anything else? I give you the last word.
Yeah, I think, we have something special going here. And I think, my first year we won 15 games. We lost 1 game before the NCAA tournament. And, in 2 years, we lost our first conference game this past year. And that was because I felt like we graduated 10 seniors and we had a lot of younger kids and they needed to figure out how to be in that environment and be successful. And we ended up playing that team we lost to in the conference final at their place and winning. So I think those are things that you learn about a group is, there are going to be difficult moments. I think there are things that kids don't realize when they get to the college setting is like there's an expectation and a standard of success. And every day is a day of competition, but you're also balancing the social component, the academic component. So there's a lot of things that can essentially affect what you're doing every single day. And it's figuring out how to go about it in the right way and leave the things that are distractions outside the soccer field and making sure that you're prepared every day to compete. But, I'm excited where we're at as a university, as a program, the things that we have, the growth that we've seen in a small amount of time in 2 years. And I think, we're putting ourselves in a national stage and conversation at the highest level. And we'll see how we do next year. I think, that's the biggest growth. We've been to the NCAA tournament 12 times, been to a Final Four once, have multiple scholar and athletic All-Americans. Now it's, can you be in the Final Four consistently? And that's kind of the growth of the group and what we talk about. And I think we're moving in the right direction with the right people and finding the right kids that are helping our culture. And I'm excited for what's in store for Ashland women's soccer in the future.
Well, absolutely. You guys are you're doing big things, and and we're looking forward to seeing how it progresses. And if you get down to Bradenton for any more ECNL events, give me a shout.
Yeah,
We'll grab a cup of coffee or something.
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and wish you the best of luck, Coach.
Thank you for having me.